Hi everyone, good to see everyone again. I want to talk today about a topic that I'm asked about a lot as a therapist, probably more than any other topic. And that has to do with couples therapy. So there aren't a lot of therapists who take insurance, and there's a reason for that. The majority of insurance plans don't reimburse very well at all for couples therapy. They reimburse typically at about half the rate that they would, individual therapy. But to complicate things even more, anyone can theoretically call themselves a couples therapist if they have a license to practice. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have training in that area. And even among couples therapies, some types of couples therapy have been shown to be much more effective than some other varieties. So for instance, I practice from the perspective of something called the Gottman Method, which has kind of become the gold standard in couples therapy circles. So John and Julie Gottman are husband and wife, and they're both psychologists, but together they've really been studying the question, what makes or breaks relationships, for about the last 40 years. So they've really spent a lot of their time and a lot of their professional effort trying to understand this question better. And I have to tell you, they've got it down to a science. They're able to predict with over 90% accuracy which couples will separate, which will stay together after seeing them dialogue about a conflict for only about 10 minutes. And so one thing that I do as a therapist with training in the Gottman Method, I've completed the level 2 training, and I work with couples, but one thing that I have them do during our very first session is I talk to them about, how they met, how they got together, what are their good memories, what are their bad memories of the relationship. Because, as time goes by and couples have more and more difficulty in their relationship, more and more conflict, that tends to start to color everything. It tends to start to color how they view the relationship. So if things are going really, really well, they're more likely to see the relationship in positive terms. If things are not going so well, then even more positive events might kind of take on that darker perspective, if that makes sense. And they actually have a name for that. So they call it positive sentiment override or negative sentiment override. But they've been studying this question, what makes or breaks relationships, for about 40 years. And one thing that they've found, I'm going to make a video, for each of these at some point, but I wanted to just kind of introduce them today. So one thing that they found is that when couples have dialogue about conflict, and this is not just couples who aren't doing so well, but even healthy couples have these at times in their communication. They notice 4 types of communication that tend to come up during conflict discussions, and they call these the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. It's a pretty dark tone there, pretty dark descriptor, but every couple has these, to varying degrees in their conflict discussions. But when these come up enough, when they start becoming repetitive, and our conflict discussions are more of these than they are positivity, and I know it sounds a little strange, but positivity during conflict is actually a very normal thing. So when these Four Horsemen, when they repeatedly come up during conflict discussions, they can increase the likelihood, the probability that a couple will separate or divorce. So I'm going to go through each of these one by one, and you may not even realize, if some of these are present, you may not realize, that you're engaging in them, or you may think about, the person you're with, your partner, and think, oh yeah, they totally do this. So I want to go through each one. The first one is criticism. So they draw a distinction between voicing a complaint, which is about an event. I felt really disappointed when X happened. I'm talking about how I felt. I'm not blaming the other person. I'm not putting the other person down. Very different than saying, you never do anything right. Why are you always doing this? That's criticism. We're really making it more about the other person than we are about the event. So to draw a distinction between criticism and maybe voicing a complaint. When we voice a complaint, we're really talking about how we feel. So I felt really disheartened when, X happened. Or I felt really let down when Y happened. And if A had happened, I would have felt a lot better about it. That's voicing a complaint. We're not putting the other person down. We're not belittling the other person. We're not making it really even about the other person. It's about the event. Like, this happened this time, and this is how I felt about it. Here's what would really help me. Very, very different from criticism. So when we talk about criticism, I think criticism can be really hard to catch because a lot of people are so used to doing it, so accustomed to it in their interactions. It's really hard sometimes to even really notice that it's there. But when we criticize someone, we tend to make the statement or the complaint, if you will, we tend to make it about the other person rather than the event itself. So these tend to get voiced a lot of the time as you statements. You always do this. Always and never tend to come up a lot with criticism. You never listen to me. You never take my feelings into account. That's criticism. Versus, I didn't feel heard when you did A, B, or C. And I really needed you to do that. That would have helped me out a lot. That's voicing a complaint. So criticism is very, very different. The antidote to criticism, if we find ourselves criticizing our partner, the antidote to that is to use what the Gottmans call a gentle startup, or some people refer to them as I statements. So when we talk about this, what we're really talking about are we're voicing our emotion about a specific event. I felt really let down when this happened. And, here's what would have helped me. Like, it really would have meant a lot to me if you had done A instead of B. We're really voicing a positive need as opposed to talking about what's not helpful to us. So that's another distinction. When we talk from a place of criticism, we tend to talk about what's not helpful, what we don't like, as opposed to what would be helpful to us. So the formula for a gentle startup is this. I felt, and we put in a feeling word, so I felt disappointed, I felt irritated, I felt disheartened, etc., when such and such event happened, and it really would have helped me. It really would have given me comfort if you had done A, B, or C instead. So we're voicing a positive need. We're talking about what would be beneficial to us as opposed to what's not. So I hope that makes sense. I'll make another video at some point in the future, specifically talking about this horseman more in depth. The research on this is pretty interesting. So they tend to find, as a rule, women tend to do more criticism. Men tend to do something they call defensiveness and stonewalling. So these are two other horsemen. Defensiveness is typically a response to a criticism. So when we hear criticism, what's our natural reaction? Well, we've got to defend ourselves, right? Bad idea. So defensiveness is really just a way of shifting the blame. So my partner comes at me, with you never do this, you always do that. Wait a minute. What about what you said? That's defensiveness. We play the innocent victim in hopes that our partner will back off, that they'll go easy on us. Doesn't really tend to work. Think about the message that maybe sends to the other person. Kind of tells them that you know their complaints, their concerns are not valid, that they don't matter to us. So the antidote to defensiveness is to take responsibility, even for part of the conflict. So saying, you know, well, yeah, I could have I could have taken more initiative with that. I'm really sorry. I'll try harder next time. That's you know, that's the antidote to defensiveness. We're taking ownership. We're taking responsibility, even for part of the conflict. The Gottmans talk about. We'll get to stonewalling in a minute, but they talk about something called contempt. And contempt is thought to be the number one predictor of separation or divorce. So when couples have been in you know unhealthy conflict for a long period of time, it's very common to see them. You know, I often see them, you know, putting each other down. Really like when one partner will voice a complaint, you know, maybe the other one rolls their eyes or they huff and puff. They kind of blow off the other person's concerns, or maybe even using off-color humor or sarcasm. Those are all signs of contempt, and they really come from a place of, you know, feeling so frustrated with long-term conflict that we really take a position of moral superiority over the other person. We're basically, when we come from a place of contempt, we're basically telling the other person it's not just their concerns that don't matter, but they don't matter. So contempt is a big red flag. If I see contempt, that's typically what I deal with first as a couples therapist. I want to make sure couples understand what's happening when they go into contempt. When there is contempt in a relationship, in couples interactions, and that happens repeatedly over time, or criticism occurs repeatedly over time, it's not uncommon for the fourth horseman to come into play, and we call that horseman stonewalling. So what is stonewalling? Well, when we stonewall, we really are so, like, we're feeling so triggered physiologically that we really don't have the ability to hear the other person. So we just kind of shut down. And this can take a lot of different forms, but, you know, it could be, you know, I'm not talking about this right now. Don't talk to me. We throw our hand up in the air, kind of signaling to the other person, I'm not willing to hear your concerns. And there's a reason this happens. So most people have heard of the fight or flight response. It's something that happens, you know, when we're under extreme stress or we really need to protect ourselves. So I always use an example with clients. I'm like, you know, if you were out in the middle of the woods and you came upon a grizzly bear, right? My guess is you wouldn't be thinking to yourself, you know, well, I might be able to do this, I might be able to do that. It might not hurt me, yada, yada, yada. No, we see grizzly bear and it's almost like our physiology takes over. All we know in that moment is I need to get away from this thing, or I need to kill it. I need to destroy it. I need to self-preserve. So that's kind of what happens when couples interactions become so toxic. We go into that fight or flight response, what the Gottmans call stonewalling, and we kind of view our partner as the enemy in that moment. All we know in that moment is that they're out to get us, whether that's their intention or not. We really just know that they're out to get us, and we have to protect ourselves by disengaging from the conversation, or really fighting back. And fighting back gets to be exhausting after a while. So some people will stonewall. They just repeatedly insist, I'm not talking about this right now. Don't talk to me. I don't want to hear it. Think about the message that sends your partner. Your concerns don't matter to me. I'm not willing to hear them. Basically, leave me alone, right? Not real beneficial for couples interactions. So what I have couples do, the antidote for stonewalling is really to notice that we're stonewalling, that we have all that really funky physiological stuff going on in the moment, and really say to our partner, I really want to hear what you have to say. I'm really feeling very triggered right now, and I don't know that I can have a rational conversation about this. But I want to come back to this when I've had time to calm down. That really communicates to your partner. You're not just shutting them out. You're not just ignoring them. You really want to hear what their concerns are, even if you don't agree with them. But in the moment, you're just not in a place physiologically and emotionally where you can really process it. And just letting them know, I always encourage couples, take at least an hour. The Gottmans say at least 20 minutes, and that's typically enough time. But I always encourage couples to take at least an hour and go do something that you each enjoy separately, something to get your mind off of the couple's conflict, and then come back to it at an agreed upon time. Give our physiology time to calm down before we reattempt the discussion. And the Gottmans have a really interesting research finding. So they find that 69% of the things that couples have conflicts about, they don't ever fully get resolved. They keep coming up over and over again. They're perpetual. So a lot of couples will come to me and they'll say, we just can't agree on anything. We can't fix our conflict. We keep fighting about the same things. Yeah, that's very normal. It's very normal to fight about the same thing repeatedly, and it would happen no matter who you were with. Because we each have different life histories, we each have different life experiences, and those color our perspectives on the conflicts we have in our relationships. So it's very, very unlikely that we're going to fix the vast majority of disagreements and magically get the other person to just agree with us. I always tell the couples that I work with, it tends to be much more important how we dialogue about our differences in opinion. Are we doing so in a way that conveys a mutual respect? Are we doing so in a way that, we're really curious about the other person's perspective and what story there might be behind that? Or are we listening only to respond? Are we listening to prove our own point? Which tends to not work very well. So I might encourage each of you, if you want to know more about this, you can go on the Gottman Institute website. They have information specifically on the Four Horsemen. I have some information on my blog as well, briansharpcounseling.com. But I'd be happy to talk with you if maybe you're having difficulty in your relationship. We can talk about either individually or in couples therapy, how to really kind of work to make that a little bit better for you. And I'm currently accepting new clients. You can go to my website, send me a message. I'll be happy to talk with you. Please be sure, if you like this video, give me a like and hit that subscribe button, and I will talk with everyone next time. You guys take care. Bye.